our group called Act for Canada. As most of you know, we are a group of concerned citizens inspired and working alongside Brigitte Gabriel, the founder of Act for America. Our mission is to inform and organize grassroots civic action, and that's what you are, to promote and secure public policies that protect our glorious country's national security, and to defend Canadian democratic values against any and all threats to our freedoms and values posed by radical Islam. Timing is everything. Where have you heard that before? By chance, we are gathered here this evening at a time when an unimagined revolution has occurred in Egypt, destabilizing the entire region. The unknown that awaits is potentially glorious and at the same time terrifying, as only the passage of time will reveal the final result. Will there be a new world order, free of radicalism, free of the abuse of human rights, and the renewal of the rule of law in Libyans, Algerians, and Syrians of this world? Or will the end result be the enslavement of over 1 billion people, Iran style? Only time will tell. We must not be lulled into a false sense of security. We are beginning to understand that there are no longer any certainties. Even our way of life is being threatened. To ensure the future of our Canadian way of life, each of us must participate aggressively in its defense, and we need your help. At this time, it gives me pleasure to invite Barbie Kay to introduce our guest speaker, David Solway. But just one thing, if you read the Gazette this morning, there was a brilliant letter to the editor by Penny Hassan about Egypt, and it was an extraordinary letter. If you haven't read it and you have the Gazette at home, read it when you get home. It's an example of the kind of thing we need our grassroots people to do: letters to the editors, letters to Member of Parliament, letters to the Prime Minister to let them know how we feel, and to the activists, and to grab any opportunity to be heard, because we mustn't be silent anymore. Sorry.
I love introducing David, and this is not the first time I've introduced David as a friend. And but I'm not going to tell you his whole CV because it's 16 pages long. I'm not kidding. These are the books he has written, his many awards, and I will tell you a few of them. It's an extraordinary CV, but I'd rather talk to you about David himself. I will tell you that he is by turns poet, teacher, editor, travel writer, broadcaster, creative writer in residence at Concordia, prose. He has every form of writing imaginable. He has done it, and he has won prizes, the gold medal at McGill University prize, Lionel Shapiro Prize for creative writing, Woodrow Wilson Fellowship, the Grand Prix du Livre de Montréal. I think he was the first Anglophone writer to get that French prize for his Franklin's Passage, his poetry book in translation, the A.M. Klein Prize for poetry. I won't go over all his memberships and everything else. His guest lecturing is an entire page here at all the various universities and whatnot. He's written 23 books, poetry books, 23. He has 2 coming out. Anthologies and textbooks he's represented in, 47. And then after that comes 9 pages of articles for magazines and online, including prestigious magazines like the Atlantic Monthly, Partisan Review, Saturday Night Magazine, Swanee Review, and just December, the New Criterion magazine. I was delighted to see him in. New Criterion is the foremost magazine of elite cultural writing. Oh, here's 11 prose books I forgot about. Anyways, David, in addition to having taught at John Abbott, CIREP for many years and other CIREPs, has had a post-retirement career writing online for Pajamas Media and Front Page Magazine. He has, I'd say, 2 a week, at least 2, 3 a week. and they're all extraordinary writing. He's now got a following in these online publications that get 1 million hits a month. He just got phoned by Glenn Beck the other day. He's giving advice to the government of Israel. He's more famous now than all those books and poetry books made him, and I think it's quite a surprise perhaps to him, because he's been used to writing in a certain elite obscurity, and suddenly he is actually become a public intellectual in a big way. And for those of you who have read his articles, you know just how fabulous they are. I met David. I actually saw him for the first time about 4 years ago. He was at a poetry reading at the Sadie Bronfman Center. It wasn't called that then. It was at the Y. And there were 3 poets on the podium, and I don't know who the other 2 were. They're lost in the mists of time. But I remember hearing this man reading his poetry and saying, this man is a genius. And I don't know a lot about poetry. It's not really my métier, but I said, this is a genius. I'm in the presence of a genius. And then he disappeared from, I didn't see his name. He was spending a lot of time in Greece at the time. I didn't know that. And then a couple of years ago, out of the blue, his publisher sent me his book, The Big Lie, which just blew me away because I was already, this subject was close to my heart already. And I asked to meet him and interview him. We had coffee together, and we've been friends ever since. And I did review his book, The Big Lie, and rather than reinvent the wheel, I'll end my introduction with what I wrote about David for the National Post, and this was already 2007, which rather alarms me because it seems like just last year. I began, "It is in its way a perversely exhilarating spectacle," writes David Solway, summarizing the message of his just published book, The Big Lie, on terror, anti-Semitism, and identity. "Not many people get to see in their lifetime a civilization coming to pieces before their very eyes, like a star going supernova." Solway, who some consider Canada's greatest living poet, equally at home amongst both Anglophone and Francophone literati, is himself something of a creative supernova, a retired college teacher, educator, travel writer, producer, scriptwriter, and the recipient of numerous prizes. He's also a contributing co-editor of the review Books in Canada, now defunct sadly, in whose pages and elsewhere he continually gives evidence of being our most elegantly insightful literary and cultural critic to boot. The Big Lie was conceived in an act of war. Although Solway has always been an aesthetic conservative, it took the events of 9/11 to rouse him from what he calls the ignorance and laziness of half a lifetime's default identification with the leftist ideology that his academic cohort internalized in the student revolutionary 60s. The Islamist assault on America plunged Solway into, in his words, a kind of Cartesian interrogation, a relentless scrutiny of the values and beliefs I accepted as gospel. 10 years later, this radical reappraisal of principles plus meticulous research has produced The Big Lie, which is, sorry, it was 7 years later that it produced that, but 10 years later he's still writing the same kind of stuff, like The Big Lie. And that book and his current writing joins a swelling tributary of books produced by a special breed of political evangelicals, former leftist intellectuals who have been, in Irving Kristol's memorable phrase, mugged by reality, from whose eyes the scales have fallen through personal or political trauma. Some familiar exemplars of the type are Norman Podhoretz, David Horowitz, Christopher Hitchens, Alan Finkelkraut, and Michael Novak, to name but a few. Their conversion lends credibility to their writing, for they escape from the dark side at great personal expense. The loss of friendships, and I know David has lost friendships over the years because of his change of belief, professional reputation, career advancement in many cases, and most important, the blow to their intellectual self-esteem. As Solway notes in his preface, "For this book was written against the grain as I came to realize that I had been wrong about nearly everything. Converts share an impatience with received wisdom and a burning sense of mission that those who got it from the beginning can't really approximate. The Big Lie, then, is an anatomy of our times, and his other writing continues to be a vivisection of the West-hating mindset that leads to active complicity with our enemies. The main thrust of the book, more exhaustively researched, more passionately and eloquently articulated than other polemicists of this genre, is to show us the seamless relationship between anti-Semitism and Islamist terror, and to provide forensic evidence of a dangerously irresolute society. I'll let David actually tell you more about it himself. This is what I wrote about him, and I think far more important is to hear what David has to say. So.